Welcome back to Chapter 1, Part 4, where we're going to continue on with the example we did in Part 3. Now, our variable was the color of shirts and a class of 8. And so we did the relative frequency, and we also did the frequency table on the slide before. So here's the frequency table, and these are the two versions of the relative frequency table. You could either give it as a fraction or as a percent or decimal. Now that's great, it's in a table, but to make a picture representation either in a pie chart or a bar graph, how would we do it? Well, we're going to do a bar graph both of the frequency table and the relative frequency table. And let's take a look at what that would look like. From our frequency table, we know that there were 4 blue ones, and so what we would do is we'd write our categories along the horizontal axis, and then our frequency, the number that we saw that had that color shirt, we would just bring the bar up to that number. And remember, we only saw 1 green and 3 red. So that's the frequency bar graph. The relative frequency bar graph, well, we knew that there was 50% that was blue, 12.5% that was green, and 37.5% that was red. And so we just do that picture representation. Now again, the title there, we generally don't like to use. We would say it's the distribution of the color of shirts on the first day of class, or whatever it was. Better titles, more descriptive titles, but for right now we're using these to let you know that this one was, the one on the left is a frequency bar graph and the right one is a relative frequency bar graph. We're going to go into more specific on how we want you to label these graphs, because there is a good guideline for you so that you make good graphical representations, not only in this class. This is if you should ever have to do a report or something, so that what you report on is very clear, and whoever is looking at it has to ask the least amount of questions. So it will be the art of putting as much information there, but not so much that it's too cluttered. So here we go. Good practices in constructing bar graphs. That horizontal scale, the categories should be equally spaced. The rectangles should have the same widths and have the same space between them. The qualitative variable associated with the category should be identified by a meaningful label. Now the vertical axis, the up and down, it should always begin with 0 and must be incremented in reasonable steps. So if you start at 100, you don't want to have 0 going all the way to 100. You might want to do 100, 200, 300. So it depends on what your frequency is, and of course the relative frequency. Go somewhat but not significantly beyond the largest frequency or relative frequency. It should be labeled in such a way that's clear whether it is frequency or relative frequency graph. So you can either put frequency along the vertical or relative frequency. Now the overall graph itself should have a meaningful title identifying the qualitative variable whose distribution is being graphed. So we're going to take a look at a specific example, and we're going to use Minitab to make the bar graph, and you're going to see how we can do labels. Now, this is the blood type example. It's Minitab number 1 on Blackboard in the Minitab examples folder, and I'll show you where that is. Here's the problem. A phlebotomist draws the blood of a random sample of 50 patients and determines their blood type. That data is found in Minitab 1 data in this Minitab examples folder. We're going to use Minitab to create some graphs and charts. So where can you find this file? If you go onto Blackboard, go into your resource folder, your courses, resource, and information folder. And in here you're going to see a folder for Minitab examples right here. When you go into that folder, the way that it is done is that you're going to see the commands that go with a certain data set. And these are generally the commands that we're working with at the time. So we're working with bar graphs and pie charts. And so the data set that we have here is Minitab A data that goes with Minitab A commands. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to open up the blood type file so that you can see that. Again, I got to click and say that I want to download this onto my computer. And I need to open my file. You must have Minitab 15 loaded onto your computer in order to open up these files. So we open up the Minitab file and we see the blood types right there. Now, we know that we had 50 patients, so we go down and we see 50 patients, but then categorizing A, B, AB, and O blood type, it's hard to just look at the raw data and see how many of each. So we're going to use Minitab to help us. So I'm going to go back into Blackboard, and I'm going to find the Minitab commands to make a bar graph and a pie chart, which is this one right here. Now when you open it up, you're going to see the Minitab commands, and then the result of those commands, which is this bar graph right here. Then we have commands for doing a pie chart. There are the pie chart commands, and there's the result. And that's what we're going to do in the rest of this video. Plus, I'm going to show you the command to make a frequency table using Minitab. Now, in order to write Minitab commands, you first have to go into the editor and enable commands so that you can do it. But you see, what is she talking about, enable commands? Well, as you notice, the dark blue bar is on this, what's called the worksheet. These would be to edit the worksheet. I don't want to do that. I want to do what's called in the Sessions command window. This is where I can put the commands, and the results of some of the commands come in there. So I have to make sure that this Sessions command bar is highlighted in dark blue. Then when I go to the editor, I will see Enable Commands, and I'll press on Enable Commands, and now I'll be able to type in the commands that you saw a moment ago in that Minitab command file. So we're going to first work with doing a frequency table. And I don't have those commands in the bar graph and pie chart commands, but I'm going to show them to you right here. Let's say that I want to do a frequency table. What I would do is I would write the command tally my stuff in C1, my data in C1, and then just hit enter. And when you do that, the default for Minitab is to put it in counts. So I know that there are 15 out of the 50 that have type A, 4 out of the 50 that have type AB, 6 out of the 50 that have B, and 25 out of the 50 that have type O. Now what if I want to do a frequency table? Then I would say tally my data in C1 and make it percent instead of just counts or frequencies. When I do that, now I have my relative frequency table. So 30% have type A blood, 8% have type AB, 12% have B blood, and 50% have O blood. Now, it would be easy enough to go on and do a table that has both counts and percent, so you can have both the frequency and relative frequencies chart. All you would say is tally my data in C1. I want it in counts, and I want it in frequency. Period. Now, a little bit about this command and the one above it is when you see that semicolon, when I said tally C1 with that semicolon, that told Minitab that we needed a subcommand. In other words, don't do the tallies yet unless I tell you I want something extra or different. So what we're telling Minitab when it sees tally, what's in C1, we say, wait a minute, Minitab, we don't want it just in counts. We want to tell you something else to do. And we tell it that we want it in counts and in frequency. So when I wrote counts, I still put a semicolon saying, hey, we want one more thing, or we want something else. And I said frequency. And when I put a period, that means I end the subcommand, and Minitab, then you tell Minitab, do it. So when I hit enter now, I frequency and relative frequency column, and I'm ready to go. Now it's time to go on and use our commands and do a bar chart or a pie chart. Now, one way that you can do this is you can actually type in all the commands. That would be fine. Here's a way that I suggest for you to make things a little bit quicker for yourselves, is to take that file and have it on your computer and actually copy and paste the command. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to say copy, and then I'm going to go into my Minitab, and I'm going to do Control V. I hit Control and then V on my computer. Here's the commands. When I hit enter, it will make the subcommand prompts on there. So I'm going to hit enter, and there comes my Minitab, and out is going to pop the bar chart. Now, I can come into here and do a lot of changes. So in the next installment, we're going to go on and show you how to change titles, how to change things that you need to change, and then we're going to do a pie chart. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next segment.